All right. All right. We are live. Welcome back from lunch. I've had some good sessions today. This was going to be me and Marco talking about some of the features that we've been talking about, kind of prototyping in our heads. And we had some great ideas, and we each wrote some specs. And I want to share them with the community, and then you guys can say whether it's a good idea, bad idea. And get some feedback here. So what I'm going to do here is try to figure out how to make my spec public. 1 second. Anyway, here we go. I will just save it here, and then I'm going to paste it into the IRC. We're in hash Ubuntu -UOS cloud. Just waiting for the access to save. So, and I see Rick Harding in IRC, so hopefully he'll give me some feedback on this. Give me a second. And then, Marco, you're going to do the same thing for the feature you want, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I am putting in Juju share in IRC there, and then the link to the Google document, and then we can go through that. I guess you can do the same thing while I start talking. So first things first is the concept of Juju share. I'm not a terribly clever person, so I was looking through the features of Vagrant with the new version of Vagrant, and they have a tool called Vagrant Share, which I immediately fell in love with. So the idea is you could do Vagrant Share, and then it will take whatever VM Vagrant is launching, and then it gives you like a made-up name, and then you can give that to your buddy, and then your buddy can get inside your VM. And I found it very curious. Rick's asking, is there more of an agenda for this? No, not really. We're just basically doing a spec review here. Both Marco and I have passed these specs through reps on the core team, so we're just kind of showing what our ideas are to share with the community, and then hopefully drive that through the core team to get it implemented. So one of the main reasons I wanted to do Juju share, as soon as I saw Vagrant share, I was like, oh, I kind of need this. So we have issues where someone might be in the field either with an orange box, or they might be the customer, or in my case, I'm about to do a demo to a user group or something the day after, and something fires up or something's broken, and it becomes really difficult for me to get someone who can help me to get the information that they need. So in DHX, which is one of the debugging tools, we actually have a little snippet there that allows you to add someone SSH key, and then Marco can SSH in. So the manual way to do this is if you have a unit on a cloud somewhere, you can always do SSH import ID, which is a command that comes with Ubuntu and other Linuxes, and then either the person's Launchpad ID or the GitHub ID. It'll then go to that resource, grab their public keys, and import them. Then that person can SSH in, right? Then you got to figure out how to open the firewall, depending on which cloud you're in, to let that person in and connect. So sometimes I'd be doing something and be like, Marco, I broke something. I have a demo in an hour. Help, help, help. And I add his keys into the unit that I need help in, and then he goes in and fixes it and stuff. So the idea was like to kind of take this idea but formalize it a little bit so it's kind of built into Juju. And then the big crux, the complicated bit, so importing keys and stuff will be easy. We just add Launchpad or GitHub or your own private thing, whatever it is. The part of the spec I think is the most interesting is how we generate. So we would run a service, as in Canonical would run a service that would allow people to log in. Then they log into Juju basically, and then they would type Juju debug share and then my service /0. So let's say I broke my database. So I would type Juju debug share MySQL /0. And then Juju will respond back with, Juju is now sharing MySQL /0 at the following address, and then create debug dot, and then I put animal name fuzzy navel 123 or something like that. Doesn't matter. Just something auto-generated.
Right, just a unique identifier for this.
Yeah, a unique identifier that I would then paste that or text it to Marco or do something. We'd want to keep it short and really easy to remember.
Probably using the pet names library or something cute like that.
Yeah, yeah. And something easily resolvable for people. And then then it becomes easy for Marco to share, to go in. So then he would say, so I'm sharing now, right? And then we're running a service, right? And that'll take care of all the NAT busting. I don't want to manually open firewalls and stuff like that. I've explicitly said I want to share this service with somebody. And then I give that to Marco. And then on his end, Marco logs in, and then he types Juju debug connect, debug fuzzy navel 123 or whatever the generated animal name is. So the share plugin there would basically inject the appropriate keys. Since we have every, oh, go ahead.
There wouldn't be any key injection is the key thing of this feature.
Okay.
The idea is that when you type Juju debug share, it sets up an SSH tunnel to an intermediate service that allows you to connect on the other end. That way, when you terminate Juju debug share, access to that machine is terminated. There's no need to worry about cleaning up keys or having anything exposed that shouldn't be for any longer than you anticipated to be exposed. So that's one of the advantages over the DHX. This is basically taking that DHX feature and really fleshing it out so that it is in and of itself its own component.
Right. Okay. So I'll fix the spec there because I basically say key injection.
Is there a key share in there? There's key share. Oh yeah. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's nice. I really like that feature. Okay. And then you would be able to SSH in and fix my stuff. And then the important thing is, like, when I disconnect, it just kicks you off and then the session gets thrown away. There's no way I can accidentally leave a share open. So if I close the terminal, if I do anything, the session just goes away. Now, combine this with features of DHX like syncing and all the debugging stuff that we'll have, then that should really allow someone who's, say, on the road and they have something up and running and they need Marco or somebody to go in or a coworker to go in and fix their stuff to basically ad hoc share without creating a nightmare for your IS policy guy or something, right? Like, we didn't want to do it that it was like, I want to keep these shares persistent. They're not supposed to be long-lived. So, you know, when we lose session or you hit Control-C, automatically the share goes away. So it's ad hoc. So we don't have to do any of that stuff. And since it is a plugin, it's one of those things that if someone internally at work or something wants to manage that thing, they just, you know, don't have that plugin for their users.
Right. The sharing server, the piece that connects the users together, we will have it as a charm, so you can also deploy it in another environment so that you can do Juju debug share -- server equals a server name. Otherwise, it'll default to a service that we stand up and maintain in our production environment for like a web service that we host. Yeah,
yeah, because we want people to have the flexibility to run that on their own at work and stuff like that. So so there's a spec. The spec. Let me put it. Let me put it again in the IRC channel if anyone wants to check it out. We kind of have some ideas there. The charm, the service. Let's see, things we haven't figured out exactly who's going to code this. Probably Marco at some point, right? Just kidding. And I kind of go through an example of where we would use this. Now, initially, I had the idea. Wait, hold up. I got Beagle problems. All right, he's good. So initially, I had this really cool idea where we would set up a web service as well, and we'd have like a JavaScript console so that like all the person needed was a browser for them to go in and type in. And we thought that was really cool, but as we started to think, it got more and more complicated and more services we got to run. So we're just going to stick with this for now. If you're asking for help from someone, they probably know how to use SSH, so we feel that this is a good first cut. And then so we de-scoped it a little bit. Ideally, I'd love to do that, but we could talk about that in the future. So I think that's good. So that's Juju Share, and then it kind of evolved into something else, which initially was part of the spec, but it evolved into what Marco's working on. So at first I was like, Juju Share is great, but you also had the use case. Someone's on the road, and this has happened a bunch of times, where someone has an orange box and they go do a demo and something bad happens. So they report back on the mailing list on IRC. And then we say, awesome, can you give us the logs to see what happens? Well, there's like, in an orange box, a small scale hardware, right? There's 10 units, that's 10 machine logs, the Juju logs, and the user needs to know like what logs to get them, where are they going to get them, on what unit, what directory they need to be in. So the idea is like, couldn't we have a command that just basically took a snapshot of the entire Juju environment, all the logs that are important, and just dump them somewhere so that then we can give it to a core developer and be like, hey, it's 2 weeks later. I was on the road. I didn't really have time to deal with this, but here's a USB key full of errors that I had. Initially, we'd call this Juju Apport or something, and then Marco, take it from here. What would evolve from here?
Still, the working title now is Juju SOS.
Okay.
I'm not convinced that's the best plugin name, but we can figure out plugin names later. The idea is basically what George just said. There's been plenty of times where people have been on the road. If you've seen any of the ODS keynotes, you've seen Mark Shuttleworth stand up clouds in a matter of minutes on hardware on stage. For the most part, this is very robust, repeatable, and reliable, but there are occasions where services or bundles or things that people are deploying go sideways and they ask for help. But usually those environments don't last long. They just destroy them and they restand them up and everything's okay the second time around. So when we're trying to work through and troubleshoot with these people, Juju Share is great for when it's happening right then, but if you need to demo something or if you're not really wanting to keep the environment sticking around, the idea behind this Juju SOS command is you run it. We already know where to gather everything about Juju, how to get what the environment looks like and create a bundle from that so we can understand the topology that you deployed. We know where all of the logs that Juju creates are stored so we can grab all of those logs, and we can usually pretty reasonably sanitize any sensitive information out of them. And then, so the next part, the other key important thing is service level logs. What was the service doing at the time you deployed it? So this would involve some work in how we get it so that people can define at a charm level, here is where all my service logs are stored so that when we're doing this Juju SOS command, we can make some smart assumptions like grabbing all of our log from each unit is probably a good idea, but there are cases where stuff may exist elsewhere. Also grabbing configuration files from Etsy to know how the service that was deployed was configured. Having a way to filter out which of those files actually matter is another thing as well. So this may also likely evolve into including an action on a charm, something like debug log or debug gather or SOS, where the charm author can say, okay, when you do this, I'll create a tarball of all my service level application stuff with everything sensitive scrubbed out of them, since the charm author knows how to best do that. But the idea behind SOS is just to basically, as George said, snapshot and capture everything that we can intelligibly snapshot and capture from that environment so that it can be potentially uploaded as a bug report. Which is why we used the name Apport, Juju Apport, for a while. Since if you're familiar with Ubuntu at a lower level, if anything's ever gone sideways, which I'm sure happens pretty rarely, get a little pop-up asking to report a problem. That actually gathers a ton of information about your system and helps to make it so that it's clean of any sensitive information, then uploads it as part of the bug, which really helps authors of services and package authors know how to repair problems when they pop up in Ubuntu. So this is what we're trying to solve as far as figuring out how to gather all the stuff. All the Juju level logs are very easy for us to gather, and we can get that pretty quickly. But how do we get things like application logs, application configuration, and other pieces of information? That's kind of what we'll also be aiming to gather as a part of this, so that we can help identify what versions of the charms were deployed, how are they deployed, what were the logs of Juju, how did they happen, what were the configurations of the services that matter, and then what were the logs of that service. More or less.
Yeah, let me add some comments that Rick is adding. Sorry.
All right, sure.
Is that you on Echo or me? There we go. So Merlin says the JES team is working on moving Juju logs to the state server MongoDB, and so the logs will be in a single place in the future. So that'll be helpful at a minimum. And we talked about allowing chirps to specify important logs for their service in order to do log shipping in an environment. So this will work in coordination with that idea on the charm side. So that'd be kind of cool, right? In your charm, you could say these logs are important to this service that I say is my SQL or whatever, right? And then you could do that. That's what I'm assuming. And also Merlin asks, is Juju Share already in Juju or something that will come out soon? No, this is currently a spec that we're still talking about. That's why we're having this session. And it'd be a plugin that we'd write. There'd be no changes to Juju Core, which would allow us to really kind of rev outside of core, and then at some point they might decide to subsume that.
Yeah, it should be able. The way we're writing Juju Share, it should work with every version of Juju we've released that's currently available and considered supported. So from 118 onwards, essentially, you should be able to use Juju Share with them. So even if you have an older version of Juju, this plugin will work out of band of that whole release cycle there.
That is really, really good to know, because that's very handy. Okay. Any questions in IRC so far? Okay, you can continue on while we wait for questions there, Marco.
I didn't really have much else to add.
Yeah, I mean, the plugins are relatively simple. Most of this was just getting the specs out to people to kind of look at it. I've revised mine a few times. At first, I thought I needed a lot of changes to core, and then I found out that was not true, and we could all do it in a plugin. So also, if you're interested in helping implement this, we could really use a hand or any plugin that you feel might be interesting. So that's good. So thanks for the feedback there, especially you, Rick, because I get the feeling that you'd want to integrate this in some way. See, in the future, it'd be awesome is in the GUI, if you could share a unit and go in, then you get your JavaScript console, and then you can do stuff. But I'm just thinking out loud there to scare him a little bit. So yeah, go ahead.
You said JavaScript console. That was enough.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So Rick says, but the server side should be in Golang and embeddable in the stack, so it could be run in environments or things like JujuCharms.com backend. Absolutely agreed. The plugin is basically just like a proof of concept, like we do. We prototype, play around in the plugins. Once everyone's decided what's good, what's bad, then someone re-implements that into core, either better or throws away the features that didn't work or adds cool new features. So where would we go for plugin development? That is a good idea. Let me go ahead and give you a link.
Well, I think implementing the backend in Go is a good thought process for that going forward. We'd like to have this integrated with things like maybe the share service it creates some kind of idea or URL off of JujuCharms.com or something of that fashion. But we've been looking for initial implementation. Teammate is a terminal sharing service that's free and open source software that we've been looking to see how can we utilize either that as an entire component or at least the procedure of how it does its sharing, because it accomplishes quite nicely what Vagrant Share does, which is how we're basing this model off of.
Right. And Teammate is pretty much a fork of Tmux that does almost exactly what I was just talking about, right? It generates like a random thing for your buddy to SSH into. So we were thinking that might be a cool thing to just embed into a charm. Actually, a Teammate standalone charm, first of all, would be awesome.
Yes.
For a lot of things, but if we had that little bit of integration to get it into the environment, that would make it that much cooler.
It is, however, not written in Golang, so that is a small drawback. But I think the nice thing about this being a plugin is that we can rev on the vision pretty quickly and then work to, as we gain feedback, work out of the band of the Juju cycle to help shape that so that eventually it does just become replaced with a feature that's in core itself.
Z7, would it be possible to use some different database other than MongoDB for logs because of the current problems with MongoDB? And then a link to
an article.
Bunch of Mongo stuff. Yeah.
This is a great question. So this is something that would be really great to talk to the Juju core team about it. George and I work on the ecosystems team. We don't necessarily have all the insight on Juju dev cycle stuff. We're not developing in Golang or anything, which is why I keep subtly balking at the idea of writing Juju Share in Golang. But I think it'd be a fun project anyways. There is a mailing list that I'll point you guys at. Z7. I think it's a great conversation to kind of bring up with the core guys to see how their input is and their opinions. They've been working with MongoDB for quite a while. In fact, we have a separate MongoDB package that we use for our server, for our state servers database. So there are some additional tunings under the cover, which may alleviate some of these problems that are brought up in the article. Yeah. The mailing list is the Juju -dev mailing list, and they're there as well to help answer questions you guys may have about Juju as a core product. And you could also always email the Juju mailing list in general for those kind of questions.
Yeah, man, some of these comments are really great. on this article. Couldn't we, if you kind of want your logs and something else though, you could always attach like the rsyslog subordinate, couldn't you, and ship the log somewhere else?
For an application level logging, yes, you totally can use something like rsyslog forwarder, paper trail, or another charm. But for actual Juju level system logs, I'm not entirely sure if there's like an rsyslogable method for those plugged in that Juju core. I'd have to double check.
Right, because ideally I'd like to just stick something in environment YAML and then just put my remote rsyslog server that I have at work already or something.
Right.
But we'll see. That's kind of beyond my current knowledge of what's a Juju core. But that's something interesting. We should try to get a core person for the Q&A, I think, on Thursday.
Totally.
So we can answer these kind of questions. So, and with that, any other questions before we move on to big data at the top of the hour?
Yeah, no, please, if anyone has any other questions, yes. There is, if you're interested about how plugins are developed, we have like a general, at github.com/juju/plugins, a general repository of very simple one-off script plugins. There are also several other projects that model as a plugin in Juju. If you ever use Juju Quick Start, Juju Deployer, there's a Juju Wait plugin. There are quite a bunch of other plugins that don't quite live in the plugins repo. George, do we have a curating plugin session this week?
I do not believe it's this week.
Okay.
I believe we had one last. Let me check though.
I mean, in UOS.
No, we don't, but I can add one for Thursday if you'd like.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. We could talk about it now, but it's kind of a little out of band of this conversation. But
yeah, because remember we wanted to add in relation stubs and composition, and we ran out of space on the schedule really quick.
Yeah.
But we can figure something out maybe Wednesday or Thursday, I think. Be good. If you guys are interested, just a general plugin session as well, right? And then we could talk curation during the.
Well, I think that'd be a good idea. Plugins and plugin curation is a good session to have. It is very interesting. It is very nice that Juju has the ability to create plugins for it from an operations and user standpoint, as well as from a developer standpoint. We have a lot of developer-friendly plugins like DHX and such.
So. Excellent. Okay, and with that, I mean, that was really relatively simple. I've got a spec there sitting in IRC. If you want to look through it, if you want to help us implement it, if you want to add more features or think it sucks or give us some feedback, that would be really great. You guys know where to find us. And with that, the next session will be at the top of the hour. We're going to do big data. That's going to be a good one. We've got the whole big data team here. We'll be actually deploying a bunch of stuff in real life on real clouds. So that'll be interesting. And with that, we'll see you guys at the top of the hour. Thanks.
Well, we'll sit for a second. I know we're a little lagged. I should make sure we don't have any outstanding questions. Yeah. So we'll have just dead silence for the next 2 or 3 minutes.
We could talk. We could talk about the Avengers movie I saw this weekend. That I really liked.
we could really talk about it and spoil it for everyone. That'd be it's a great use of this.
If you have not decided to go see it yet, you probably should because it was awesome. That's all I gotta say. I'm not gonna ruin anything for everybody. I'm just saying you should go this weekend as fast as possible.
What are you even doing here in this session? You should be watching the movie right now.
I know. Tell me about it. So, okay, I'll go ahead and create a plugin session then for Friday. Looks like we don't have any questions, so we'll see everybody in about 35 minutes. So Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.